Bald men with no jobs and no money who live with their parents don't approach strange women.
Well, here's your chance to try the opposite. If every instinct you have is wrong, then the opposite would have to be right.
Thanks for the setup, Jerry. Hello, everyone, and welcome. In a surprise move last week, Ironmace removed the 24 and under gear score lobbies, better known as the Squire lobbies. They also removed all gear limits from High Roller and removed those brackets as well, but that's a huge ball of wax we'll have to cover in a separate video. Today I want to talk about the Squire lobby change. It was rather shocking to me, but I gave it the benefit of the doubt, played with it extensively over this past weekend. In this video, we are going to unpack the Squire lobby change, put it in context, and at the end of this video, I'll share some tips for newer players on how to avoid the downsides of this tectonic shift in the meta. It's a likely return to the Smurfing meta, where new players are farmed for clicks or views, for fun, and now for their meager possessions. But let's start with the pretext for this change. In the developer comments of the patch notes, Ironmace states their concerns that the under 24 gear score lobbies had devolved into a PvP deathmatch mode, a place where players could go to PvP with little consequences for failure. This two-part assertion feels very right to me. Firstly, new players were and are having to endure a very rough introduction to Dark and Darker. Secondly, this was an environment with little consequences for failure. I strongly agree with both assertions, but is having a chill, low consequences game mode for Dark and Darker a bad thing? Let's break it down. I'm very excited that the team at Ironmace has noticed the plight of their new players and is spending any energy or attention on the new player experience. It is the path to growth, to revenue, and to a healthy player base. Sadly, it's been the way it is for the better part of the last 7 months, largely ignored, and is likely the largest contributor to Dark and Darker's new player bounce-off rate. But I will argue that it's not the structure of the Squire lobby itself that caused this problem, but more likely a magnification of the recent constantly refilling lobbies, the back pressure that's being applied by the poorly calibrated continuous dungeon experiment. The silver lining here is that Ironmace is trying to create what the community has nicknamed rookie lobbies, a safe-ish place where veterans are excluded, allowing new players the space they need to learn the ropes without being thrown into the proverbial deep end. This is great in concept. I say trying because apparently rookie lobbies were not working at all at the build deployed over this last weekend. I will assert they are also not working now, anecdotally, based entirely on me and my team continuing to encounter what can only be described as new player behavior, even at the time of this recording. What exactly is a new player, and who is eligible for this new player experience, these rookie lobbies? How is that term defined? Well, we have no idea. It might be based on total playtime, or on character fame level, or character level, or national political affiliation. Who knows? But that definition is extremely important to this conversation. Not so that we can game the limits of a new bracket, but because new player is inherently a nebulous term. I have coached many players on how to become better in Dark and Darker. Some of them have had less than 5 hours in the game. Others have had 500. They come to me and they say things like, Koopa, I have like 100 hours in Dark and Darker, but I feel like I still suck at it. What can we do? And therein lies the central problem. There is not a one-size-fits-all definition for new player. Some new players will be thirsting for a bigger challenge after only a few hours. Others will struggle to connect the dots even after weeks of played time. The ultimate solution is to allow players to play in lobbies which mirror their preferences at any given time in their individual learning cycles. But the community over at Reddit has been all aflutter with discussions on and around these points, with some players lamenting the removal of the Squire lobbies as they represented a low-stakes, more chill way to enjoy the game. They viewed it as the least sweaty, the least cheater-infested way to play. If you felt this way about Squire lobbies, or you viewed it as the only way to really engage in the game in a self-found gear way, well, you're out of luck here. And you've likely been told by the Reddit community to get good and quit crying. It's even gone so far as some to claim that this major shift in the game mode is not even a big deal. It's a false outrage campaign. There is no smurfing. There is no unfairness going on here. Now, OG players may remember, over a year ago, we had very different brackets. Once upon a time, you could bring gear into normal games so long as it was blue quality or lower. And this led to a number of unwanted and weird outcomes for the game. Firstly, well-rolled blue gear became more valuable than well-rolled epic gear of the same type, as players are always going to be looking to game the brackets to express whatever gear advantage they can. Secondly, it created a golden age for smurfing in Dark and Darker and gave rise to a cottage industry of content creators looking to create smurf content. Thirdly, High Roller saw a major drop in participation as more and more players went there to farm gear on HR runs to then take that gear into normal games to fight less experienced players in less bespoke kits. Old timers may remember a YouTuber by the name of Brad Quackerson, whose content represented peak Smurf to me. He'd clear whole lobbies of new players, 1v1, 1v2, 1v3, and talk shit to them the whole time. Sadly, it feels like we're on a course to return right back to that same place, but we arguably have better tools and better gearing options now to better game that system and farm Timmies. So what's the current state of things? Experienced players are building ideal kits to hit the new limit of 124 gear score budget. This means Copper Light if you need the move speed, max vigor, or big hard-hitting two-handed weapons for juggernauts, True Magic, True Physical, maxing, and of course, the favorite of Smurfs everywhere, plus all stats. They are taking those advantages into games and largely camping down portals. On the ruins, that means the bathhouse and the tower bridge module, where they are effectively playing a game of King of the Mountain, pitting their adult understanding and gear against the equivalent of grade schoolers. They sit there, process player after player, team after team, until the level begins to end or until they run into a more skilled, more prepared team of Smurfs. Unsurprisingly, the go-to complaint against this behavior is that gear doesn't matter. Players simply need to get good. People need to improve at the game, or more shockingly, that this thing that you're describing, Koopa, it has never happened, and it's never happened to me. They assert that all of this discussion is manufactured outrage by unskilled players who will never last in Dark and Darker anyway. The other side of the argument is confusion. Players who have been enjoying a game mode for what it was, for better or for worse, for the better part of the last 7 months. For them, that game is largely gone. Ironmace has taken it away in a heartbeat. For better or worse, the Squire lobbies provided a low-stakes way of interacting with the product. It allowed new players, the unskilled or the unconfident, a place to play and succeed or fail on their own terms, to experiment without any expense in time or gold, to build the confidence to eventually branch out, try other game modes, classes, or not. At its essence, it was as fair an experience as we could have reasonably arrived at. In the Squire lobbies of old, you might be playing against an adversary with 2,000 hours of playtime advantage on you, but at least you knew there was no meaningful gear advantage on top of that giant skill or experience divide. Ironmace has traded that underlying fairness for its exact opposite. Now, you can no longer easily know that you got outplayed by a player. You may have been outgeared and outplayed, or simply outgeared. Limit testing, a very important part of learning the class dynamics of Dark and Darker, is considerably harder to understand in this new normal. Now, I've been playing footage here in the background of smurfing that I've found, and it was incredibly easy for me to find it. Even after seeing it all weekend, I was still surprised when Reddit told me I was wrong, this behavior does not exist. At 1 p.m. Eastern Time on a Tuesday, I loaded in and died to multiple lobbies so I could spectate and document what I knew already to be true. I loaded into 10 games and found some degree of smurfing going on in every game I loaded into. Some was incompetent smurfing. Probably newer players trying to ape what had been done to them by another more professional group. Just a few folks in a squad loading in with a legendary weapon or an epic weapon, and in other cases I found more professional smurfing, running proper builds of fully optimized kits, ready to squeak every drop of advantage out of the 124 gear score budget. So with all of that context, I'd like to give you some tips about how to better prepare yourself and endure what is likely going to be a turbulent smurfing meta. So first rule, game mode matters a ton. Smurfing is going to be far more common in trio lobbies and in solo lobbies. It is dramatically less common in duos. If you are struggling with this scourge as a solo newish player, try a duo lobby. Go in by yourself. I think you'll find it to be easier to survive against the average duo than a Smurf on the prowl in solos. If you're in trios, there's nothing really you can do about it, which brings me to my second tip. Go down to crypts immediately, or don't run Forgotten Castle. Smurfing is more prevalent in the ruins than any other map. If you can run another map like Ice Caves, do so. Otherwise, go down to level 2, enjoy that level, and extract before going to Inferno. Inferno is now incredibly more competitive from a gear perspective, and you'll be far less likely to extract. Try and get down as fast as possible. If you load into a fresh instance of the ruins, head towards it down as fast as you can. The longer you linger on that first level, the much more likely it is you are to be farmed. If you load in late with, say, 9 minutes left on that map, it is likely better for you to take a blue and quickly extract and then come back in, as compared to attempting to transit either the Tower Bridge module or the bathhouse or any other really high traffic red portal location. If you want to try to fight these Smurfs, here are some gearing tips. Firstly, do not run gear incrementally. It's really kind of 2 tips. If you're in a 3-man squad, everyone should be discussing what their gearing levels are before going into a run. 2 folks running really well appointed sets and 1 guy running squire gear may be a factor by which you lose a 3v3 fight. Also, unless it's a niche barbarian build which is solely focused on one expensive gear score 2-hander, don't run just a few pieces of gear. Build a complete set of gear with the 124 budget cap in mind. Then run that. Your adversary Smurfs will certainly be doing just that. Don't wear a few pieces of gear accidentally. This is essentially just bringing gold to the players who are looking to farm you. A lot of classes benefit from plus all gear disproportionately. Believe it or not, this necklace counts as 9 points towards your gear score cap. So does this one. From a gear score perspective, they are both the same, while one is clearly trash. In summary, this may just be where we are now. This tonal shift may be the new version of the game, where the central focus of fun is on the predation of the strong upon the weak, the inexperienced being fed on by the experienced. But attempting to pass that change off as somehow for the benefit of new players is at best misguided, and at worst disingenuous. Ironmace, you continue to make changes which increase the sweatiness, the time investment required, all to drive us towards the most hardcore, least approachable version of Dark and Darker. Normal lobbies are essentially diet high roller games now, but with marginally easier PvE, populated mostly by Smurf and Smurf wannabes and newish players. We are being pushed towards shopping on the marketplace to engage with the game in increasingly narrower terms. Every time you take something away from the player base without notice or without consultation, it costs you players. Every nerf buff cycle costs you players. Every broken at launch new class introduction costs you players. New players are a finite resource. In closing, if we are at all serious about improving the new player experience, we must engage with formerly new players who have already bounced off the game. Get their feedback. You literally have tens of thousands of opportunities here to make the game more approachable to people who have given up on it, simply by surveying them. I think this is a great opportunity to salvage this mistake by making the normal game mode self-found gear only, meaning you can only bring gear into normals that you have minted yourself. It will solve for both the current lack of fairness. It will make new players value gear and sets in ways that they don't today, as well as making it a larger time investment for the betas who are looking to Smurf. It will also have a stabilizing effect on the economy's price points, and greens will no longer begin to be worth more than epics. Lastly, a special shout out to the Reddit moderators who are taking down my content links or my discussion points without explanation, despite my 0 violations of the posting guidelines. Despite my affable nature and good intentions. I would like to invite and challenge you to come on this program. Let's discuss the virtue of your censorship and your seemingly fragility in the face of reasoned dissent. I am just a cartoon turtle, standing next to the road with a sign which reads, "Careful, potholes ahead." I did not place the potholes there. I also do not make the roads. Suppressing dissent and critique is intellectual cowardice and ultimately self-defeating. I once again invite you to come on the program. Let's discuss your moderation practices together. As always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, please give the video a thumbs up and consider subscribing. If you'd like to see the YouTube short, which got all of the Reddit mods' panties in a bunch, I'll put a link to it here. Until next time, Koopa out.
Yes. I will do the opposite. I used to sit here and do nothing and regret it for the rest of the day. So now I will do the opposite, and I will do something.